welcome you to Frame It, where we work to deliver facts, increase transparency, and demand accountability in Alabama's democratic processes. Frame It is brought to you by Alabama Values Progress, a communications hub dedicated to breaking the cycle of misinformation during the times where the truth is hard to find. On today's episode, we will discuss lack of transparency and experiences from the public hearings. I've also been a smash the patriarchy kind of girl for as long as I can remember. As a professional journalist and media strategist, I'm constantly in environments where a large portion of the people I encounter are easily deterred by questions that call for transparency and accountability. So in an effort to keep Alabamians informed of what was going on during the redistricting public hearings, since those hearings were held while everyday working people were at work, I attended 26 out of 28 public hearings, some virtually and others in person, to be able to give insight and report back on what was happening. Knowing that information wasn't readily available to working people, our sister organization, Alabama Values, recorded those public hearings and released detailed recaps to the state's media. And while attending the hearings, I had the opportunity to experience the pushback from legislators when challenged about the redistricting process and presented with concerns about keeping communities whole. Many of those comments at the hearing questioned the reapportionment committee's rationale for the inaccessible hearing schedule, the lack of public advertisement, and contradictions in the information that they provided during the public hearings. So let's take a look at a clip from the public hearings so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about.
From Kendra, if the purpose is to solicit comments from Alabamians, the hearing has to be accessible. My question is, why did you give a schedule that is inaccessible to most working Alabamians?
Kendra, it's clear that you have a problem with the schedule, and you've made your point on that. Thank you.
You know, he's right. I did have a problem with the schedule because it was inaccessible to working Alabamians who needed the opportunity to be able to voice their opinion on redistricting and what is important to their communities. And throughout the hearings, I questioned the committee on different issues on transparency and was often met with different answers and attitude, as you just seen. And y'all, and speaking of accountability, the committee essentially blamed the press for not publishing its schedule adequately and then blamed Alabama residents for not looking on the legislature's non-user-friendly website. But y'all, honestly though, the committee could have purchased advertising to ensure that the schedule went in newspapers, online news sources, and even television and radio, or they could have at least followed up with the media to ensure that they received the information. But instead, they attempted to use the media as their scapegoats. Take a look at this clip from the public hearings.
Kendra Majors again. I really would like answers to these two questions. Who specifically was responsible for promoting the hearings to the public? Also, considering hearings were made to get public input, is there a reason why only one of the 28 hearings was planned after 5 p.m., which is accessible to many working individuals?
The hearings were publicized through all of the state media. They were posted on the legislature's website. They were posted on the Secretary of State website, and they were also sent to television, radio, and digital media sources throughout the state with a request that they be publicized. And what happened after that, the committee really has no control over that. There have been several persons who pointed out that there should have been more hearings at 6 or not during the day, and perhaps that's something that the committee will have to take into account next time.
The public hearing schedule included only one hearing that was outside of working hours, as I mentioned earlier, which didn't give everyday people an opportunity to voice their opinions. So I questioned the committee on why they decided to really make the public hearing schedule inaccessible to working people. And the response I got was that the committee would consider it for 2031. Y'all, that is 10 years, a whole decade. Another concerned community member highlighted the fact that the committee had 10 public hearings after working hours during the 2011 redistricting cycle and wanted to know why the legislature changed that. So if you put that in perspective, the legislature actually did a worse job of making the meetings accessible to working people this year than they did 10 years ago. Several community members, besides me, pressured the committee diligently, seeking answers until Dorman Walker, the attorney for the reapportionment committee, instructed the online moderator to not read any additional comments regarding the public hearing schedule. Take a look at this clip.
From Felicia, to follow up on the point I made about the schedule, during a hearing yesterday, Mr. Walker stated that complaints about the scheduling of the hearing during working hours and working hours that the committee would look into having evening hearings in 10 years. However, we already had evening hearings in 2011. There is no reason to change if this cycle and then change it back in 2030.
Thank you for your comment. Don't read any more comments about the schedule. If people have comments that are helpful and germane to the purpose of the hearing, please read those.
That response was just one of many that we got throughout the public hearings. When community members asked many questions challenging the process, and even they asked for clarification, they were met with responses like it was outside of the scope of the hearing, even though they were asking for clarification or even asking how a rule was fair. So what I learned from this redistricting cycle is that the Alabama Constitution has given all the power to the legislature, and the legislators have run amok without real accountability for so long that they think they owe no community members answers, and they attempted to silence us when we questioned them. At the Greenville public hearing, I asked about having a caveat where the legislature does not redistrict to pit incumbents against each other, and how that helps create a fair districting and mapping process. And I also asked, doesn't that ultimately protect the legislators' jobs more than what is best for the people? And Walker responded he wasn't going to answer my question, and that fairness is in the eye of the beholder. Check out this clip.
A final comment from Kendra Majors. In the earlier hearing, you vaguely touched on the fact that redistricting in Alabama is not really nonpartisan. How does that work to guarantee fair districts and fair representation for all Alabamians, given that one party overwhelmingly controls the Alabama legislature currently?
I'm not going to answer that question. Fairness is in the eyes of the beholder, and I think that's where I'll leave it.
Y'all, with responses like this, I guess that's why I shouldn't be surprised that the reapportionment committee is passing the maps 2 days before the special session begins, and that Alabamians won't have access to those maps until just a day before the session starts. There's been a little back and forth about where Alabamians will be able to access the maps, and we definitely weren't expecting to have only one day to look at them before the session convenes. First, it was just going to be available in the map room at the State House, but now it's going to be available online through the legislature's website. Y'all, a fair mapping process is not a Republican versus Democratic issue. It's about creating fair maps that leads to fair representation for all Alabamians. It's time for Alabama to do better. As Alabama voters, we have the power to, in just a few months, go to the polls and fire these legislators who don't seem to care about what the people have to say. We have the power to change the course of our state and the lives of so many in the state by just taking out the trash and loading up the State House with people who want to change Alabama for the better. It is no longer acceptable for us to sit back and watch from the sideline as legislators continue to keep Alabama at the back of the pack. During the public hearings last month, an older gentleman said to the committee, "You can bury your head in the sand and act like it's not real, but there's a generation that's coming along like you've never seen before, and they're not going to stand for this." He's right. We're not going to stand for it because we all know that what we allow will continue, and we won't allow the one-sided politics that has gone on in Montgomery, Alabama to continue. We will fight to make Alabama a place that is inclusive and equitable for all Alabamians. So in closing, let me put it in a frame for you. Alabamians deserve a transparent and fair mapping process. However, our legislators throughout the public hearings continuously fought against transparency and accountability. The situation with only giving Alabamians one day to view the maps before the special session also doesn't sit well with us either. This cannot continue to happen. Alabamians aren't going to stand for it. So contact your legislators now and demand fair maps and better transparency, and also remind them that they work for the people of Alabama. Thank you for watching this episode of Frame It. I'm Kendra Majors, and I'm signing off. Join us next time. We will continue to cover the redistricting process and keep you informed. You can also catch future episodes by following us on social media and visiting us on the web. See you later.